Greetings and salutations, viewers. I'm StarPrincessHLC, and welcome back to Cupid. When we last left off, we finally finished with the flashback with Catherine and kind of seeing her beginning relationships with Guilleme down to her downward spiral of insanity where I guess she eventually led to going crazy and committing suicide. We're still not sure, though, if Guilleme is the fault of this or her family, because apparently her mother had this kind of problem and her sister before her untimely death. So I guess we're just going to have to see if we can figure this out. But right now, in the once slumbering town, the streets were alive with flowers. Pretty young girls, wrapped in thin white dresses, lined up in their rows, tittering excitedly among themselves. Each maiden was armed with a basket brimming with flowers. Ooh, sounds lovely. When the clock struck 8, it was the given signal. Girl by girl, the rows progressed down the crowded street, their dresses twirling as they danced. Colors scattered as they unloaded their baskets. Dahlias, tulips, orchids, poppies, sweet peas, they all spiraled across the air and into the hands of the startled citizens. The young men on the street sprang into action. They cheered and hooted and clapped and laughed, and the girls curtsied them in return. Some intrepid boys even dared to blow a kiss, hoping for a reward. Was this like some kind of love festival? And when the girls blew kisses back, they reddened to the tips of their ears and hooted in joy. Rose! Hey, Rose! I guess this is... Are we going back into Rosa's past? Because I think that's Rosa as a little girl. At first, she didn't know who he was talking to. But then, she saw the rose he flourished in front of her, like a gentleman's magic trick. Well, I'll have to call you something, right? How about Rose? This particular boy had been at her tail for several days now. The flower festival was a good excuse for romance. It was around this time that the young men of the town went around wooing their prospective lovers. Most would have gone for a taller, more outspoken type of girl, but for some reason this boy was smitten with her. God, take it! She shook her head. She knew she didn't deserve it. Wow, even as a kid she had low self-esteem. Again with that stone-cold act? Come on, you're breaking my heart. Don't go breaking my heart. He laughed gaily, enjoying the thrill of courtship. Why? Why do you love me so much? Is that what's bothering you? I'll tell you one thing, Rose, and you'd better remember this for the rest of your life. When someone loves someone else, there's no need for a reason. I just love you, Rose. Won't you at least smile at me? You love me? He's smitten with you. He has a crush on you. It's not love. Love at first sight doesn't really exist. He flashed his best youthful grin. Sure, I love you to the moon and back. That is such bull. You know, he's probably saying that just to lure her to a false sense of security. He seems like that kind of guy. She knew she shouldn't take the rose. She knew it was wrong. And yet she also knew at this instant that her face was burning hot. Her fingers closed on the rose. Even as she felt the thorns on her skin, she still held on to it. The expression on the boy's face was one of absolute bliss. He hooted and did a little dance. I do love you, Rose, I really do. He grinned at her. To her surprise, she found herself smiling back. A warm, pleasant feeling gushed inside of her. It was like tucking into a hot, home-cooked meal, but that would be messy. Actually, love is quite messy, isn't it? Mother, I'm home. Nowadays, she and her mother lived in a quiet cottage far away from the main streets. The joy and exuberance of the flower festival had long since faded away now, leaving her with the stillness of the lonely house. Mother, are you home? There was no answer, not even a sound. Usually her mother would have heard the door open by now. She would run up and plaster her with hugs and kisses. Now, however, the unnerving silence meant one of two things. 1, Mother was not here, which wasn't possible because she was always here, or 2, Mother was angry. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine as she realized. Was it possible that Mother had her she's so worried that she can't speak right. That Mother had her suspicions and had followed her? Mother, I'm coming inside now. The sound of the door closing was like a clash of thunder. Rosa, bowing her head, descended deeper into the house. Funny that we're calling her Rosa here, considering we don't actually know her real name, if she even has one. Mother was in the kitchen. She was bent down with her back to the doorway, washing clothes in a wooden basin. She looked just like a normal mother, but Rosa knew better, because just above Mother hung the cross. It was a heavy wooden crucifix, and it had been there as long as Rosa could remember. It was so solid that if it were to drop, it would crush someone's toe. The girl knew this well. Having felt the cross so many times, she knew exactly how heavy it was. Oh, so was she beat with the cross? Ugh. When they say the power of Christ compels you, I'm very certain it doesn't mean bashing you upside the head with it. The sharp corners of the cross were especially capable of drawing blood. Mother dipped her hands into the water. Squitch, squitch. She crushed the clothes in a vice grip. Where did you go? Her sudden question sliced through the air, and Rosa almost jumped out of her skin. Just the marketplace, Mother. She tried to press the plump red rose behind her, to stomp on it and make it disappear into the ground. But it was too late. Mother stood up. Mother? It's not what you think, I swear. I'm not planning to see him again. I just wanted to make him happy, that's all. If Rosa looked at Mother any longer, she thought her courage would dry up, so she quickly glanced at her feet. I'll throw away the rose, I'll make sure you never see it again, so... Ah! The blow came so fast she never expected it. Suddenly she was on her knees, her skull throbbing in pain. She looked up just in time to see her mother raise the cross another time. Oh, jeez. Controlling, abusive parents ahoy. Fear overtook her. Although she knew it was no use running, she scrambled away all the same. Mother, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Ugh. How much do you think raising a child costs, you little rat? Mother, please. Undeterred, the cross slammed hard onto Rosa's collarbone. She shrieked, rolled over, and tried to get back to her feet. I clothe you, I house you, I even feed you. I protect you from everything that might harm you. And yet I ask nothing in return. Absolutely nothing. Didn't I tell you not to go to that festival? Yet you can't help shaking your hips, those men, can you? All of them are the same, didn't I say it? Up and down came the cross. By now Rosa had resorted to curling up in a ball and covering her eyes. She cried out her pleas, her vows of obedience and love. Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed? What have I wasted my life for? To be stuck with a stupid child who doesn't know how to listen. I have told you time and time again, do not disobey me. Mother, I should have smothered you years ago. You are a curse. I did all this for you, to protect you, and you repay me how? With lies and betrayal. I should have thrown you out the window and watched the crows feed on your remains. It's not too late now, don't you think? Maybe I should teach you a harder lesson. Maybe I should leave here right now and never come back. Worse than any physical pain, the girl felt a despair so big it made her heart burst. Good God! Her mother really is abusive, even in death, apparently. I mean, she gives her, she physically beats her, and she's emotionally torturing her. She's like, oh, you're totally sleeping around with all the guys in there, which she really isn't. She's walking around like a normal girl, and she has no self-esteem, and she's being treated like some kind of tramp. It's not right. Ugh. And then even emotionally abusing her to the point where it's like, I should leave. She needs to get the hell away from her mother. Rosa clung to her mother's legs. Please, Mother, please don't leave me. I'll atone for this somehow, Mother, so please stay with me. You are beyond atonement, you dirty child. Who's the dirty one? You're the one who's being abusive. With one final strike, Mother sent her spinning to the ground. The cross had hit her face. Rosa tried to open her eyes and felt something warm trickle down her face. She lay on the floor crying. Her tears mixed with the blood, and she wondered if Mother really was going to walk out of the house. Honestly, that would be better for you. She could still hear Mother's footsteps, feet thudding near to her head. At first they were hard and fast, then slow and hesitant. At some point in time, Rosa realized that the blows had stopped. She dared not raise her head from the floor, so she waited. Something touched her head. It wasn't a cross, but a soft, warm hand. A sound of a sob. Darling, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. What have I done? Rosa tensed, but she allowed Mother to sit her up. The next thing she knew, Mother had wrapped her arms around her. She was still crying. You poor thing. I'm so sorry. Mother is so stupid. Her tears were genuine and mournful. The sorrow in her eyes hurt 1,000,000 times more than any blow. I should have done that, The woman stared at her hands. She dropped the cross as if it was spoiled meat. The girl let her mother hug her. I almost said hug her. Yeah, she killed her too, and she came back from the dead as a ghost. It was her fault anyway. She had disobeyed Mother. She deserved the punishment. No, you didn't. You didn't do anything wrong except you left the house. Oh my god, that's so terrible. It's not like you were going around sleeping with other guys. It's not like you were doing drugs. You were having a little bit of fun, yes, but at the same time, you were still a respectful girl. You weren't doing anything wrong. Mother's obviously over-controlling and abusive. You need to get away from her. I'm sorry. She's obviously not fit to be a real mother. She drowned herself in her arms and felt the familiar surge of love. This was home. Home. No matter how broken. Life before Mother was a blur. She was nothing without her. Again, this is all about abuse. She's basically tricking her into staying by making her think like this is a good place to live, that she belongs there. She obviously doesn't. Mother looked into her eyes and touched her face, wiping away her tears. She locked her lips around hers and delivered a long, deep kiss. I love you so much, my darling. Please forgive me. I would forgive you if you actually, changed your ways, but thus far you have yet to do that. Like, obviously, the fact that the cross has been used multiple times to beat her, and the fact that the girl is so down on herself like this, tells me that this has been going on for a very long time, and it's not gonna stop. I love you too, Mother. Don't cry. Oh, you're bleeding. Just wait here. Mother sat her on a chair and returned with a roll of bandages. She began nursing Rosa's head with delicate care. I'm sorry, Mother. No, I'm the one who's sorry. Forgive me for what I said. You know I would never leave you, right? Even if you have committed the foulest sin, I will never desert you. I will always be by your side. Thank you, Mother. Yeah, even in death, that's the disturbing part. I get worried, darling, you understand? Yes. Worried to the point of abuse? What the heck was her life before she had the kid? I am very afraid. Always afraid. The woman's voice dropped into a whisper, a sudden split second of lucidity. You scare me. Huh? She shook her head, forgetting the thought. Just obey me from now on, promise? Mother knows what's best for you. Yes, Mother. Later on at dinner time, Rosa's favorite dish was on the menu. The vegetable and meat stew with brown gravy that only her mother would make. Rosa tucked in eagerly, all the while feeling the cool bandage pressing lightly against her forehead. The events of the past hour had already seemed to fade away into a distant memory. Mother sat across the table, also eating. She seemed to be deep in thought. Mother? I won't see that boy anymore. If he calls out to me, I'll run until he can't catch me.
I know you will do the right thing, my darling. You didn't ask for all this, did you, you poor thing? If only your father was a better man.
Here Rosa pricked up her ears. It was rare to hear her mother talk about father, and even rarer to see her mention him so calmly. All throughout her life, Rosa had wondered about the man whom Mother had fallen in love with. Now it looked like she had the opportunity to glean a few more rare bits of information. Father? Was he good to you? Mother puckered up her lips and appeared to ignore this. Rosa decided to risk it and ask another question tentatively. I'm guessing, if we're going by this, that likely Daddy Dearest ran away at the sound of being a father. That's my guess. Or he was a womanizer. Because that's usually how it goes in these stories. The guys are always womanizers. Or they're chickens that don't want to be dads. Or something like that. Did you love him a lot? Mother's eyes were somewhere far away.
I don't know.
No emotion, neither pain nor fondness registered on her face.
But he certainly loved me back then. Maybe. Now I'm smarter. I know better than to trust men like him. You too will understand when you grow up that people who love you will hurt you the most, and you will only have yourself to blame.
It's true, though, but at the same time, it's still kind of worth it in the end. Like, yeah, you put yourself out there in relationships and such, with friends or even lovers, what have you, and likely you are going to get hurt. But it shouldn't dampen all the good times that you had with them.
After all, you gave them permission to arrange the awnings of your cell. Do not give anyone that permission.
Rosa nodded, accepting her mother's teachings.
Promise me, darling, when the time comes and you meet a demon like your father, you'll take revenge for me. Take revenge for me.
Rosa's hands were over her head. She pressed herself into a corner, panting. She had never heard Mother this loud before.
Take revenge!
This one was so loud, it rattled around her skull and made her vision blur. Man, that is annoying. Mother, what more do you want? The spell is already... She bent her head down, black spots creeping into the edge of her vision. She was so tired. What the heck noise is that? That is so creepy.
You cannot hide anything from me. What is this doubt you are nursing? You are hesitating. You are crafting another spell, you stupid harlot. That filthy Marquis is exactly the kind of monster I have been warning you about. You dare plan behind my back?
I just don't want to kill any more, Mother. She couldn't help but answer back this time. How could she not? After years filled with love and acceptance, it made her realize all the more how precious life was. The thought of snuffing out someone else's life sent a detestable shiver through her bones. She had planned on running away from this place, abandoning whatever duty that now fell into her hands. Why was it her duty anyway? She just wanted to take the good memories of this place and taint them no longer. Whatever truth she sought wasn't enough payment for peace. I don't want to. Her voice shook. I don't want to kill him, Mother. I don't want to kill anyone, please.
Is this cowardice or stupidity?
You fancy him, don't you?
Maybe.
The voice pewtered into an abrupt, chilly silence. Rosa waited, sweat dripping down her brow.
I knew it. You fancy him, don't you? You brainless wham!
It's not like that, Mother.
Past and present, rinse, repeat. Always, always a selfish little girl.
Rosa was horrified. No, I'm not selfish.
A selfish little girl that loves a murderer more than her own mother.
With this final proclamation, Rosa was struck to the floor. The feeling of fainting was stronger than ever. Alone in the dark, she lay there, panting like a sick dog, waiting for what would come next.
Guilleme killed me. He made me love him, and then he betrayed me. He deserves death. Only you can kill him. I can't kill him. It's what I want. That's not true. It is. You're my best friend, Rosa. Friends avenge each other, don't they? That's clearly the mother. My darling daughter, I could always count on you to do the right thing. So kill him. Kill Guilleme. Kill him. Promise me. Make him suffer. Stab him with a knife. Ha 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 ha. Stick a dagger down his throat. Gouge his eyes out. Take revenge. Rosa clutched her head so hard she thought her skull would burst. For a long moment she lay as though she were dead. 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed. Then, in the middle of the empty room, Rosa's voice rang out as clear as a bell. I understand. Good God. What is wrong with that mother of hers? I get being hurt by a guy is horrible, especially when you love, but, it shouldn't be kill all men. All men are scum. All men are monsters that'll just ruin women. That's not true. And I hate that that's being tossed around like this. Rosa knocked on Guilleme's door, carrying a tray of food. She had been poisoning his meals in small doses for weeks now, and taking note of any ill effects it yielded. There had been none. That's suspicious, I'll admit. Guilleme was as still fit and healthy as ever. No symptoms at all, even after she had increased the dosage. Either he hadn't eaten anything for a month, or he was immune to poison. Both possibilities were suspect. Rosa knocked again. There was no response from the other side of the door. It may have worked. It was not a total loss, however. She remembered Catherine mentioning how particular Guilleme was with his sleep. Just as she had been about to give up, she had ventured on this hunch. It was true, Guilleme was curiously rather sensitive to sedatives. Rosa had offered rose tea to Guilleme that afternoon under the guise that she had made a new recipe. It had been laced with opium and valerian, sweetened with honey to mask the taste. Whether or not it was the casting of philia, he had drunk it without a second thought. He had retired early that evening. Rosa noted the grogginess visible in his gait. She snuck the master key this evening. Tonight is her night. Rosa pushed the door to his room open. It took a couple of seconds for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. It felt like a different world inside this room. By closing the door, it was as if she had cut herself off from the living. Rosa took an unsure step once she found her bearings. She placed a tray of food on the nearest flat surface, careful not to make any noise. The candle she lit provided little comfort. It seemed to cower from the intimidating blanket of shadows. Rosa heaved. The air felt humid here, the atmosphere almost stale. Now that she was inside and venturing deeper, a sudden impulse to find the door gripped her. She looked back. It seemed farther away. Why was she so anxious? She had been in this room before. It was perfectly normal. Tonight it was a different story. The room seemed to breathe. Rosa gulped. What a curious word. There was no other way to describe it, though. The flickering shadows made it seem like the walls were re-spurring around her. The room felt alive. It was asleep like its owner, but alive. In the dim light of her candle, the red carpet looked like flesh. The furnishings were viscera. It didn't feel like she entered a room at all, but a belly. Something darted in the corner of her eye. Rosa snapped her head. Just a curtain. Rosa let out the breath she was holding in her chest, aware with every move her body made. She tiptoed towards the canopy. It was perhaps the highlight of the room, an organic monstrosity of red plush and velvet. From afar, it didn't look like a bed at all, but a cage. If the room was a cavern of meat, then this was its heart. Rosa approached. Every muscle in her body was tense. She could see a figure sprawled on the bed, limbs sticking out clumsily. He was lying on his chest, back bare, clothes littering the floor. Guilleme seemed to have fallen into the bed instead of climbing in. One of his arms stuck out from the mattress. His breath was fitful but slow, a light snore coming from him. What was that?
Rosa looked around for the source of the noise, but the room was still. A slow trickle of sweat traced her spine. Did that come from the window? Should she check? Rosa didn't move. Something was in the room with her. She could feel it. She stole a glance at Guilleme. He hadn't moved from the bed. Rosa's ears tried to pick up the faintest noise. It felt like hours of her staying frozen on that spot, wishing to blend with the darkness. But there was no one there. She had probably imagined it. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. The sooner she was out of this room, the better. Philly's effect would diminish once the candle died. After that, she might not have another chance. She had to find out more about him tonight. The thought of her goal helped steel her nerves. Where should she begin? She took a step. Again, there seems to be something there. Rosa darted her head, looking for the source of this skittering noise. Her ears were too sensitive now. She heard every creak and moan in the room. She took a deep breath. Focus. Rosa surveyed everything. There was a book by Guilleme's bedside table. It was only a couple of steps away, but she'd have to come dangerously close to the bed. As much as she could, she'd rather maintain the distance between her and the creature on the bed. Creature? Why did she think that? Perhaps it was the arrangement of the sheets or the shadows playing their tricks, but Rosa shook her head. Perhaps there was another place to look?
We've come here to gather information. You should check the book.
Rosa sighed. Mother was right. For once. She had to check every source to be sure. She inched herself closer to the bed. The faint candlelight indicated that the book on the bedside was red. It wasn't the journal she had seen Guilleme write in. Rosa tiptoed her way closer. Guilleme's hand dangled mere inches away. She reached her arms towards the book and swiped it noiselessly. The candle almost went out with her sigh. She backed up from the bed with the book under her arm. Adrenaline surged in her blood. It almost made her smile. Rosa examined her prize, a book in a foreign language. She remembered seeing such thin, obscure characters somewhere. She wasn't sure which country, but it was probably Asian. She flipped the book and saw a piece of parchment folded on one of the pages. A sailing permit for a barge named La Victoria, dated for the end of the month. 2 days from now. It outlined the cargo and the purposes of the trip with no date of return. Traveling?
No, leaving.
Guilleme was planning to leave. This was a suspicion she had since she'd started observing him. His sudden aloofness with the town affairs, the secret purchase of a ship, the decrease of servants in his employ. Now it was confirmed.
It was just as well we found this. We must end it tonight, before he has a chance to escape.
Although it was a good thing to confirm the suspicion, the fact helped her little. If anything, it just made it even more urgent to find something tonight. She had to continue. Rosa steadied herself and stepped back to the bed. Her hands finally brushed against the wood of the table after some quiet fumbling. She caught sight of something shiny inside the drawer.
Open it, child.
Rosa pulled the drawer open ever so slightly. She peeked inside. Inside was an ornate dagger with a golden hilt set in with rubies. An old delicate pattern was carved on this blade. There was a heat emanating from it, almost like it was alive, like the rest of the room. She almost missed it in the dim light, but there was also a key in the same cabinet.
Take the key first?
Take the key and leave that
dagger. I have a bad feeling about that weapon. Leave it be.
Rosa agreed with Mother. The weapon was as sinister as it was beautiful. She didn't want to touch it. Rosa took the tiny key into her hand, feeling the cool metal against her palm. She pushed the drawer back. Guilleme shifted. Rosa blew the candle out. She scuttled behind the small table. It barely hit her. Guilleme had changed positions in his sleep. Now his face was in full view and facing her direction. Rosa's heart banged in her chest. It was so loud she was concerned the room might echo the sound and announce her intrusion. Rosa waited for a few minutes before moving. She decided to crouch down, holding the unlit candle close to her chest. Easy now? She shuffled away from the bed in relief. The candle was dead, but her eyes were now well adjusted to the darkness. She could make out a desk in the furthest part of the room.
He must not do of his writing there. or he must do most of his writing there. Sorry, Mother's a little crazy, as you can tell. There's a huge chance the journal is near. It wasn't very dignifying, but Rosa decided to crawl towards it. Now that Guilleme's face was in full view, a flutter of the eyelid was all it would take to catch her. It would be better to minimize her risks. She dropped to her knees and placed her palms on the floor. What was that? That didn't sound right. She drew her hand back. Was she imagining it? When her palms touched the floor, it felt warm. Wet. Her fingers were sucked into the floor as if she touched soft, pulpy flesh. The hallucination was so strong that her nose detected a spray of iron in the air. Her stomach heaved. She rubbed her hand. There was no wetness or blood anywhere. The floor was solid. It must have been her imagination. Rosa touched the floor warily, patting it and pulling on the carpet fibers. Just a normal carpet. Rosa let out slow, small breaths as she started to move once more. She patted her way to the desk. Every time her skin came into contact with the floor, bile rose up her throat. It took some effort to resist the urge to gag. Finally, the desk was directly in front of her. She looked back at the bed. From this angle, it was hard to tell if Guilleme had moved. She hoped that the big desk also hid her in its shadows. Rosa rummaged. There was no trace of the book on the tabletop. She only found a pot of ink, loose sheets of paper, and a quill. That damn thing had to be close. She opened the first shelf and found a stack of papers. Nothing. She shuffled through them, but the drawer didn't have the journal. She looked through the second drawer, and the third. There was nothing of interest. Finally, she pulled on the last drawer. It was locked. Rosa sucked the air through her teeth. Of course it's locked. How could I have been so stupid? Rosa slumped in a depressed heap. The key! Rosa looked at the key in her hand. She slid into the hole and heard the locks click. A deep feeling of relief washed over her. The drawer slid open. Rosa looked inside. There it was. In her eyes, the green journal was a treasure. She lifted the book from its resting place. It was heavier than she expected. Rosa smiled. She ran her hands along the velvet cover of the book, savoring the texture. At last she had it. Child? Mother's voice was riddled with anxiety. Did he just wake up and now sees her with his precious journal? Something is wrong. Her excitement had clouded her senses. Almost at once she felt the change in the air. Everything was still. Her stomach shrunk into its cavity. Fresh sweat broke out of her on her scalp. The silence, it had weight. It pressed on her skin and made the air thin in her lungs. Rosa stood up. She had to leave. Now. Rosa shuffled her way out of the room. With every step, her legs seemed to stick uncomfortably to the floor. It slowed her movement. One more step. Her whole foot felt like sinking. She held onto a chair and staggered back. It was throbbing, musty and red, alive and without skin. The air was filled with the unmistakable stench of fresh meat. Are we going to find out he's a witch, too? Or some kind of demon? Rosa ran to the door. She didn't care that the handle seemed to curl around her fingers. She pushed the door open and spilled into the corridor. Rosa fell to her knees while she heard the door close behind her. It almost felt like the door closed by itself. In her confusion, she couldn't be sure. Rosa's heart pounded heavily in her ribs. Just looking at the doorway of the room made her skin crawl. Rosa gathered her wits and stared at the journal in her hand. She hoped it would contain the information they needed. Damn, girlfriend. Whew. Good intentions, maybe. Maybe not. That was intense, strangely enough. So it does seem like there is some kind of supernatural thing possibly going along with Guilleme. Either that or she is so wrapped up in her own thing that she doesn't realize that she's making things up in her mind. But I don't know. It's hard to tell at this point. I mean, I do have a feeling that we are going to learn something bad about Guilleme. That much I'm certain. Because in these stories, it isn't just, oh, well, it was a case of misunderstanding. I have a feeling something dark is going to happen in upcoming chapters. But for now, this is StarPrincessHLC saying thank you very much for watching, and have a fond farewell.